The respiratory system. In the previous video, we understood what is the need of respiration. Why do animals consume more energy as compared to that of plants? We also understood that there is no other alternative other than glucose. What are the various parts of respiration? And also had a brief idea about the various respiratory organs that constitute the respiratory system. Now, let us see the process of breathing. The breathing or respiratory cycle consists of breathing in, that is inspiration, and breathing out, that is expiration. The both are interrupted by a very short respiratory pause. In normal adults, the breathing rate is 12 to 18 breaths per minute. A newborn breathes 60 times per minute. Slight increase in the carbon dioxide content in blood also increases the breathing rate. Now let us understand the process of inspiration or inhalation. Inspiration or inhalation is a result of increase in the size of thoracic cavity, and this increase is due to the combined action of the ribs and the diaphragm. The ribs are moved upward and outward due to contraction of the external intercostal muscles stretched between them, thus enlarging the chest cavity all around. The internal intercostal muscles are relaxed. The diaphragm, which is a sheet of muscular tissue which normally remains arched upward like a dome towards the base of the lungs, contracts and flattens from the dome shaped outline to an almost horizontal plane and thus contributes to the enlargement of the chest cavity lengthwise. As the diaphragm flattens, it presses the organs inside the abdomen, and with the abdominal muscles relaxed, the abdominal wall moves outward, leading to increase in volume of chest cavity and decrease of pressure. Decreased pressure inside the lungs draws the air inward. The outside air, being at a greater pressure, rushes in to equalize the pressure. When the chest cavity or the thoracic cavity increases in size, its internal pressure is decreased. The lungs expand, and as a result, the pressure inside the lungs is lowered below the atmospheric pressure. Expiration or exhalation is the result of reverse movements of the ribs and diaphragm. The external intercostal muscles relax and the ribs move in automatically. The diaphragm is relaxed and move upwards to its dome-like outline. As a consequence of the above mentioned movements of ribs and diaphragm, the volume of the thorax cavity is decreased and the lungs are compressed, forcing the air out into the atmosphere. When we breathe out forcibly or naturally, as it happens during intense physical exercise, the internal intercostal muscles also contract, causing further contraction of the rib cage to expel out more air for larger intake of oxygen. Control of breathing movements. The breathing movements are largely controlled by a respiratory center located in the medulla oblongata of the brain. This center is stimulated by the carbon dioxide content of the blood. More the carbon dioxide content in the blood, faster is the breathing. The breathing movements are normally not under the control of the will, that is, they are involuntary, but to some extent one can consciously increase or decrease the rate and extent of breathing. If you forcibly hold the breath, a stage would come when you cannot hold it any longer. This is a table which shows the difference between inspiration and expiration. Thus, we can say that inspiration is an active process, contraction of external intercostal muscles and relaxation of internal intercostal muscles occur. The rib cage moves outward and forward. The diaphragm contracts and becomes flattened. The thoracic cavity volume increases. Air pressure in the lungs is less than atmospheric pressure. Thus, the air rushes into the lungs. Expiration is a passive process. Relaxation of external intercostal muscles, that is, the muscles which are present between the ribs, and contraction of the internal intercostal muscles occur. The rib cage moves downward and inward. The diaphragm relaxes and becomes original dome shaped. There is a decrease in the volume of thoracic cavity. Air pressure in the lungs is greater than atmospheric pressure, and thus air is expelled out from the lungs. Now let us study this graph which indicates the various lung capacities. Capacities of the lungs or the respiratory volumes in a normal human adult are as follows. Tidal volume. Air breathed in and out in a normal, quiet, unforced breathing is 500 ml. You can see the graph that goes from 2500 to 3000. So that amount of air that is breathed in and out in a normal, quiet, unforced breathing is called as the tidal volume. The tidal volume consists of alveolar air, that is, the tidal air contained in air sacs, which is equal to 350 ml, and the dead air space. Some tidal air is left in the respiratory passages such as trachea and bronchi where no diffusion of gases can occur, that is equivalent to 150 ml. So both alveolar air and dead air space together constitute the tidal volume, which is equal to 500 milliliter. The second is inspiratory reserve volume. Air that can be drawn in forcibly over and above the tidal air, which is also called complemental air. See the graph and you can see over and above the 500 ml, another 3000 ml of air can be drawn in forcibly, and that is the complemental air. So now the third volume is inspiratory capacity. Total volume of air a person can breathe in after a normal exhalation, that amounts to about 3500 ml. That means the tidal volume plus the inspiratory reserve volume becomes the inspiratory capacity. Next one, expiratory reserve volume. Air that can be forcibly expelled out after normal expiration. This is also called as supplemental air, which is equivalent to 1000 ml. Vital capacity. The volume of air that can be taken in and expelled out by maximum inspiration and expiration. that is equal to 4500 ml. This actually comprises of the inspiratory reserve volume plus the expiratory reserve volume. Then comes the residual volume. Some air is always left in the lungs even after forcibly breathing out. This is the leftover or residual air, which is equal to 1500 ml. Because of the presence of the residual volume, exchange of gases continue even during expiration. Finally, coming to the total lung capacity. Maximum air which can at any time be held in the two lungs is equal to 6000 ml. Now let us see the difference between the average composition of the inspired and expired air and what is the reason behind that. The air inside the lungs is never replaced completely. It is always a mixture of the air left inside and the air inspired. In other words, the air in the lungs is only becoming better and worse with each inspiration and expiration. Quality-wise, the expired air differs from inspired air in the following respects. It contains less oxygen, contains more carbon dioxide, it contains more water vapor, it is warmer or at the same temperature as that of the body, it may contain some bacteria. Effect of altitude on breathing. As we go higher up, the air we breathe in decreases in pressure, accompanied by a gradual decrease in oxygen content. At about 4,500 meters above sea level, one may suffer from air sickness in which lack of oxygen leads to dizziness, unsteady vision, loss of hearing, lack of muscular coordination, and even complete blackouts. Hypoxia. Hypoxia is the a deficiency of oxygen reaching the tissues. It may result due to sitting for long hours in a crowded room with poor ventilation. It may also be experienced at high altitudes where the oxygen content of the air is low. Asphyxiation. Asphyxiation is a condition in which the blood becomes more venous by accumulation of more carbon dioxide and the oxygen supply is diminished. This may result due to several causes such as strangulation, drowning, or any obstruction in the respiratory tract. Death follows if the cause is not removed quickly. Artificial respiration is helpful in certain cases. Now let us see some experiments on breathing and respiration. In this particular experiment, we are trying to demonstrate that CO2 is given out in breathing. First of all, we will set up an apparatus as shown in the figure. There are rubber tubings which can be opened and closed. So, when we open the clip that is present between the test tube A and mouth, air is sucked in through the tube at the center. Atmospheric air rushes in the test tube A, bubbling through the lime water. Next, that clip is closed, and the clip on the other side, that is which is present in between the mouth and the test tube B, is opened, and the exhaling air is blown through the same central tube. This time, the air is forced into test tube B, bubbling through its lime water. The process is repeated about 10 times. What do we observe? The lime water in the test tube B will turn milky much faster than in test tube A. This proves that the expired air contains more carbon dioxide than the inspired air. This is an experiment to demonstrate the action of diaphragm during breathing. You can see a rubber sheet is tied around the bottom edge of the bell jar, which represents the diaphragm. When the sheet is pulled downward, volume is increased. Pressure inside the bell jar is lowered. The rubber balloons expand by the air rushing in through the tube at the top. When the sheet is pushed upward, volume is decreased, pressure inside the jar increased. The balloons collapse due to the air rushing out. The balloons represent the two lungs. Finally, experiment to show that oxygen is taken in by animals during respiration. Here we use a small animal such as a cockroach or snail in the experiment. We take two conical flasks A and B. We place a live cockroach in one flask, that is A, and a dead cockroach that has been soaked in formalin to prevent decay in the other flask, B. This flask with the dead cockroach acts as a control. We fit a rubber cork in the mouth of each flask and make sure that the apparatus is airtight. We leave the flask for a few hours, after which we introduce a small burning candle into each flask as shown in the figure. Immediately after introducing the candle, we close the mouth of the flask tightly. Then we note the time taken for the candle flame to go out. What will be our observation? We will find that the time taken for the candle flame to go out, or we will see that the flame goes out faster in the flask A containing the living animal, showing that some oxygen has been used up by it during respiration. So finally, we can compare respiration in plants and animals. There are certain similarities between plant respiration and animal respiration. That is, cellular respiration produces energy which is stored as ATP in mitochondria, and aerobic respiration leads to the formation of carbon dioxide and water in both cases. Coming to the differences, if you observe plant respiration, there was no external breathing or external ventilation involved. There is no special gas transport system. Usually, the gases they diffuse directly from one cell to another. Anaerobic respiration leads to the formation of ethyl alcohol and carbon dioxide. The heat produced during plant respiration is very low. Green plants have additional oxygen source from photosynthesis, and the respiration rate is also very low. Coming to animal respiration, external ventilation or breathing movements are present except that for unicellular organisms. There is a well-defined blood system which transports gases. Anaerobic respiration leads to the formation of lactic acid only. No carbon dioxide is produced. The animals produce considerable detectable heat. Aerobic animals have only air as the oxygen source, and respiration rate is very high. So, with this, we complete the chapter, that is the respiratory system. I hope the video is going to help you all. Thank you.